Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is Friday, April 11th. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris here with you. On this episode, we get you ready for a busy weekend of pickups. We got some news from around the league, including the Twins, considering a six-man rotation to accommodate a couple of pitchers that we've liked for a little while on this show. There was a great story from Kurt Hogue of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel about the Brewers leading the league in fastball percentage again in 2025. It'll be the third year in a row that they lead the league in that category, if that holds up. And by all indications, it's probably going to hold up. We'll talk about some early playing time surprises, basically looking back at job battles and some of the things that we were worried about a few weeks ago, see how the first couple of weeks of the regular season have played out in terms of job shares, platoons, and straight up opportunities for guys that we didn't expect to see. Got some mailbag questions to squeeze in a little bit later on as well, and maybe even prospect of the week, making a triumphant return here now that the minor league season is in full swing as well. Happy Friday to you, Eno.
Yes, I'm excited to do my taxes.
You're still not done?
No, it's right up to the end, man. Right up until the last second.
I'm dropping the check in the mail today, but they've been done for a month.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Dropping the check in the mail because I'm old, as you can see from my face. Old.
And you've done it wrong because you owe them money.
Did it wrong? I did it exactly right. I don't know. I feel like a grown-up today.
Yeah, I've had it all taken out. I just need to put it in the right places.
All right.
It's hard, but because I run Pitching Plus is a separate company, and then I do other freelance work on top. So it's like there's a lot of stuff going on.
A lot of paperwork. Of paperwork. Yeah, it only gets more complicated, I imagine, as the rest of this turns white and gray. Years ahead.
Look at you, salt and pepper.
Salt and pepper, man. I'm ready to go shoot a Just for Men commercial. Just waiting for that call. I don't know. I'm comfortable with it, man. As long as it's all there.
Silver Fox.
That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm shooting for. Join the Discord, though, if you can. The link's in the show description if you haven't done that already. We'll start with Twins. They are considering a six-man rotation in part because Pablo Lopez has gone on the IL with a hamstring injury, grade 1 hamstring strain. So hopefully not a long-term problem, but at least a couple of weeks he's going to miss. And they can't seem to decide between David Festa and Zebby Matthews. And maybe part of the problem is that based on the schedules they were on, David Festa will slot into the rotation first because his last AAA start was on April 4th. Matthews just went on Tuesday. That's April 8th. So just waiting a couple more days to get Matthews folded in is part of the equation. Matthews has pitched better in their first couple of starts at AAA. And I think if I had to pick one, just for keeper dynasty, or I only had one spot on my redraft team to speculate here, I think Zebby Matthews is better than David Festa. I think he's the guy I'd rather try and ride it out with over the course of the entire season if that was the situation I was in.
I'm looking at spring data, but it lines up with expectations, scouting reports, and just the eye test, I think, which is that Zebby has a larger arsenal, he has a really good curve. Both of them have pretty good fastballs and sliders, but Zebby's curve is better than anything else that Festa throws. And then Zebby's cutter, by Stuff Plus is only around average, but he locates it really well, and it creates a 4-pitch mix for him, even if the change is, I don't know, mediocre or whatever it is. I'm going to put a IDK on Zebby Matthews' changeup, but that's still 4 good pitches in an IDK versus I think Festa's kind of a 2-pitch guy. You can call it 3 if you separate the fastballs, but that's 2 fastballs and a slider. He gets in trouble sometimes when it comes to homers and turning the lineup over because of the size of his mix. I think he really needs to develop some extra pitches to surpass Zebby in terms of upside, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a 4-seam changeup combo that we saw mostly from Festa last year. I think he was working on the 2-seamer this spring, right? We dug into that a little bit. And the slider, it's like a gyro slider. So there's really nothing with a lot of glove side movement from Festa. I think that's probably the main concern for him is like, hey, maybe even same-handed hitters are going to give him some trouble if he doesn't find something that breaks away a little bit more. But we'll see how this plays out. Something to keep an eye on for sure. And I think the Matthews over Festa approach is something we both pretty much agree on at this point.
However, I mean, it's Festa that's getting the shot. So, like, if you're just in a redraft league and it's all about what's happening this week and you need him to start, then, sometimes it's really hard to, like, pick up a guy, put him in your lineup, not knowing if he's going to start, right? So the best thing I can tell you is if you need him to start, pick up Festa. If you can bench him somehow and just sit on him, then Zebby's your guy.
Yeah, it's going to be Festa against the Tigers at home on Friday night as they make that adjustment. And the way they could also coexist is they could just move on from Chris Paddack. We talked about that before. I don't think Paddack makes it out of April as a member of this rotation unless another starter beyond Lopez goes on the IL. I think that's really the only path for Paddack to keep that opportunity. Let's talk about this Brewers story from Kurt Hogue of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Fastballs, and more fastballs. We know this is something the Brewers have done. I hadn't really seen it quantified from a team perspective yet. Kind of an ethos that makes a lot of sense when you consider that multiple fastballs are perhaps a bit of a market inefficiency, right? You don't necessarily have premium velocity, but you have 2 or 3 different shapes, and that can induce a lot of weak contact. And when you put together a really solid or very good or even great defensive team behind your pitching staff, that can actually work, right? So it's interesting that they're on pace to lead the league for the 3rd consecutive season. I think it's a 69% fastball usage as a staff so far in the early days of 2025. It's even a few percentage points higher than what they've done in each of the last 2 seasons. And one thing in Kurt's story that kind of jumped off the page to me as well, they also throw fastballs 66% of the time in 2-strike counts. The next highest team uses fastballs 57.5% of the time in 2 strikes counts. So it's like fastballs in nearly all situations for the Brewers. And I don't know, like how long does this work and how do you account for this? Because it doesn't grade out the same way that other teams grade out in the model.
Yeah. I mean, we did add something to the model this year where previous fastball mix is a feature in the model. And the reason that works is it tells the machine that they've got a certain fastball mix and the deviation from that is interesting. And it kind of tries to get at this idea of multiple shapes coming at the pitcher at the batter at this speed. So we've tried to adjust for this, but there are the BP baseball prospectus Arsenal stats that kind of that show this a little bit, and drive lines mix and match show are stats that show this, but none of them are publicly available on a leaderboard. One way that you can kind of see it is just you got to see it by eye, and if you sort. It's a little bit hard to see by eye, though, because if you sort this year's teams by four-seam percentage, Milwaukee's 12th. Mm-hmm. If you sort them by sinker, they're 7th. The only fastball that they actually lead the league in is cutters, and that's the third. That's the least thrown of the fastballs. So it's not something that's easy to see. But I would say that if you throw a pitch more than 10% of the time, and you got 3 fastballs, you're throwing more than 10% of the time. That's something that I would notice and call out as a potential for being better than even our model will say. So for them, Brian Hudson does that a little bit, but it's Nestor Cortez throws at least the fastball and the cutter a lot. Chad Patrick throws all 3 10% of the time.
There's a ton of fastballs.
Quinn Priester throws all 3 a fair amount of the time. The one thing that's hard about analyzing cutters, though, is not all cutters are the same. I kind of feel like Nestor Cortez's cutter is more like a slider, but that's just a feel thing. So does Chad Patrick he doesn't throw a slider, so maybe that 45.7% cutter usage is actually kind of baby slider usage.
Yeah, I think that's one way to look at it for sure. And I guess the way to categorize it is to look at the movement profile, right? And just think about it in terms of, how much does it move compared to, well, you could have more than one shape on your cutter, theoretically. Like you could have more than one shape on any pitch.
Yeah, he kind of looks like he does a little bit, Chad Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
He has some that are really close to his fastball, look like more like a cut fastball, and then he has some that have more like 2-3 inches more drop and look more like a cutter. But it's not a baby slider because he does not. None of his cutters get more drop than average. So maybe he has some feel for that cutter and he can give it two different shapes. But this is a very interesting pitcher. I don't love this profile myself.
No. So something I said a little earlier in the week when they made the trade for Quinn Priester is I actually think it's more likely that they can turn Quinn Priester into this year's version of Tobias Myers than they can turn Chad Patrick into this year's version of Tobias Myers. And part of it is just that mix for Patrick is so extreme. There's just not anything else that goes with the fastballs that works particularly well. He's got the changeup that he throws 5% of the time.
I think if I was faced with Chad Patrick, I might tell my hitters, I mean, it's all going to be hard. It's all going to be like, it's going to be so many fastballs. Like maybe take a little bit of an opposite field approach with him. Mm-hmm. Because if you hit the cutter, but you're staying inside of it because you're trying to go to the opposite field, you might do more with it than if you're trying to trying to pull a cutter, then you're just going to pound it into the ground or break your bat. And so it could be an adjustment to where teams are like, find a way to attack that. Whereas Priester, the early model numbers are great. I mean, the sinker 109 plus stuff plus on the sinker, 102 on the slider is not amazing, but he's had better numbers in the past. And then the change rated well. And he threw a fair amount of each. So, I got, of all the guys other than Freddie Peralta on this list, I put together this little, Brewers pitchers stuff. Plus just, this is a regular old leaderboards. You can do at Fangraphs. You just say Brewers as a starting pitcher, stuff plus, and what you will find is, these are pretty well to what I like. I like Freddie Peralta. I like Nestor Cortes when he's healthy. I don't think that I would keep him through this injury because it might be a longer one. Savali is somebody I like situationally. This is very typical of Savali, where he has fastballs that rate is barely okay and breaking balls that are elite. And then Quinn Priester there looks pretty decent. I mean, I think Priester and Savali are guys I like situationally. Patrick and Elvin are guys that I'll probably leave on the heap.
Yeah, I don't see a lot outside of like a really easy matchup for the bottom end guys they're relying on right now. I think they're going to be the first guys out of the rotation as guys get healthy. Brandon Woodruff had a simulated game Monday. He's on track for a May return still. That simulated game previously was like 50 pitches. So the one this week was probably in the low 60 range if he was able to move that forward.
No velocity numbers coming out of that. Yeah.
Haven't seen that yet, but once he's in Nashville, we'll have some StatCast numbers. So that'll help a lot. Tobias Myers started his rehab assignment in Nashville on Tuesday. 3 1/3 scoreless innings. So he's probably one rehab start away from getting activated. Savali's supposed to be slightly behind Myers, so maybe a week or two still away from possible activation there. And then Nestor Cortes, who you mentioned, had a PRP injection in his elbow, and there's no timetable for his return at this point. So
I don't like that because he had issues with the elbow late last year. It just seems like it's headed in one direction. We all know what that is.
Yeah, does not seem great at this point. And then DL Hall and Robert Gasser are 60-day IL guys, so they're far away. And then Aaron Ashby is currently on the 15-day IL, so maybe Ashby
with an undetermined role too.
Right. So it's a
mess. It's a mess. But at least Myers is on the way back, and you know.
Jose Quintana actually might come back this weekend too. So you do have that. But they have tried to do a lot of.
What's their record? They're like above 500, aren't they?
They are hanging. Other than losing that first series to the Yankees, they've won each series since.
Yeah.
They're sitting at 7-6, which, given the injuries they've had, is actually pretty amazing.
I think people were writing their epitaphs already with the kind of reactions I was seeing about their pitching staff.
That plus, I mean, look, the Yankees with the torpedo bats. It was unstoppable. There's nothing anyone could do. It's amazing how much a week can change things. I also saw a piece about Quinn Priester from Mario Delgado Genzor at BP, and it was a really good breakdown. I think the public reaction to that trade was the Brewers gave up a lot for Quinn Priester.
Yofri
Rodriguez,
like a compensation round pick, so it's basically a between first and second rounder that's worth maybe high six figures.
Yeah, 33rd overall is that draft slot. Rodriguez was their 6th ranked prospect at BP, and I think he was a top 10 prospect by many outlets lists as well within the organization, far away from the big leagues, and a player to be named later. So 3 things for Priester, who's under club control until like 2031. So if Priester is a project that they can turn into a viable starter, then that ends up being pretty valuable in the long run. But the whole point of Mario's piece at BP was trying to figure out, what did the Brewers see? And one thing I had noticed previously that was covered, and there's a whole bunch of great details there. I highly recommend you check out the full piece. Priester was throwing his 2-seamer harder this spring. And, I think velo changes in the spring are noisy for all the reasons we've mentioned. Shorter stints sometimes, just you're able to air it out a little bit more. But it's a deep mix too. So we had a velo gain, a deep mix, multiple fastballs. He started working in a cutter. There's a few different things we could see change with Priester, and he actually got the start in Colorado on Thursday. Brewers lost that game, but it wasn't because of Quinn Priester's performance. He actually pitched really well in a difficult assignment. So I'm just kind of curious if you see Priester as someone that, like kind of the way I see him, is actually worth a speculative pickup, because maybe they like him enough based on the price they paid and some of the stuff he's done to keep him in the rotation once they start to get healthier. There's probably going to be one open spot even after everyone gets back, because the odds of everyone staying healthy are low. And I don't think this rotation was rock solid 1 through 5 to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, now that he's out of Fenway, that's a big park factor that, that speaks well to him. I think opportunity speaks well. And then I haven't had a chance to actually read that piece, although I like the author. What I am speculating is that Quinn Priester is throwing a 1-seamer because his sinker has more drop than the average sinker, but it has less arm side movement. And that is that's the categorization of a 1-seamer. It's also has changed since last year. So instead of he's cutting the sinker, like it's not going as far arm side as he did last year. And that's taken him out of average a little bit, like Spencer Schwellenbach cuts his 4-seamer so that it doesn't have arm side movement, so that it doesn't end up average for a slot, And so he's changed some of his movements. His slider this year has more drop than it did last year. So I think they saw some changes that they saw to the pitch mix that they liked. They saw some changes to the velo that they liked. And then part of it was just pretty extreme need. So when you put all those things together, I'm pretty excited about picking him up, even though it's a 98 stuff plus is 98 stuff plus. But I'm not such a stuffist that I'll be like, oh, it's not 100, number not 100, not like, it's more like anybody, like guys who have a 98, there's a whole range of outcomes. You know what I mean? Like they have basically league average stuff. Now it's a question of how wide is the arsenal? How weird does it seem? How does he place it? What are his mixes? What do people expect from him? Is he different than what the scouting report says? So there's going to be a lot of opportunity in the end, and I might just take the jump because of the opportunity.
I think that's sort of the key, right? Like playing the waiver wire in a deeper league, you don't have time for proof. The proof that you get is, well, he did have one good start in Coors. Like you have to just dive in now in a 15-team league because there's so few quality starters available on the wire. And if you see my eyes darting around on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, I actually am making a graphic because I didn't realize just how much this movement profile had changed for Quinn Priester. It's kind of a lot. Like watch the clusters. You could tell if you go to his Savant page and just toggle 25 versus 24, you'll see these two in the same space. But look how much tighter everything actually is in 2025 compared to 2024. It's a pretty big difference.
Yeah, and you can see there the orange dots is what I'm talking about. Instead of the orange being basically where an average sinker is, he's got a weird sinker. Look how weird that sinker is.
Yeah,
and he's basically turfed the four-seamer and decided I'm just going to throw a cut four-seam. And that's why he has to have the slider have more drop so that it's not like his cutter. So it's a completely new mix, really.
New mix. Got to start over. Got to hit reset, right? I think that's the only way you can go. So if you're wondering why they did it, why they gave what they did, that's why. But highly recommend Mario Delgado Genzor's piece at Baseball Prospectus. I thought that was really well done as well. Let's talk about some early playing time shifts, and basically to follow up on some of the job battles and players that we were kind of wondering about from playing time perspective when the season began. This question came in from Discord. Like, what do we think of Ben Rice? And my response in Discord was, hey, he's got a large playing time share. This is 10 out of 12 games now that Ben Rice has started for the Yankees. They have faced 4 left-handed starters. He started against 2 of them. One of his starts has been at first base. Everything else at DH so far. So, eventually, if Giancarlo Stanton's back in the mix, then you have a little bit of a question as to how the pieces fit. But for now, there's not really a clear timetable on Stanton's return. And given that Ben Rice has catcher eligibility in nearly every fantasy league, this is a player that I think you can at least utilize in the short term pretty effectively.
Yeah, I can't speak to what happens later. I don't think that Ben Rice can really play in the outfield. They don't want Stanton playing in the outfield, and they've got Paul Goldschmidt at first. So I would have kind of assumed that Ben Rice goes back down if Stanton comes up. But until then, yeah, love him. Hits the ball super hard, has great swing decisions. This is the kind of guy that they try to develop. They care about max EV. They care about hitting the ball hard. They care about good swing decisions. So Ben Rice is a product of the Yankee system, and probably my favorite out of these surprising players that we kind of put on a leaderboard. I don't know if you want to surf over that so that people can see all the different names you've put together.
Yeah, grab that.
We've got because you put together on the rundown just a really cool list. I'll just start naming some of them while you get the leaderboard up. But just in terms of who is a little surprising that we thought we weren't sure about playing time going into the season. Bryce Turang and Joey Ortiz are the second baseman and shortstops for the Milwaukee Brewers, respectively. There's been no doubt about that. They've basically just played every day at those positions. Matt Shaw is at 14 out of 14 for the Cubs. And Wilyer Abreu as well. Although the Wilyer Abreu story gets a little bit more complicated if Masataka Yoshida ever gets healthy. And Ben Rice has played a lot. Alan Roden, Colt Keith, Kyle Manzardo have probably platooned a little bit less than we thought they would. And then Garrett Mitchell's mostly missed left-handers, but he's played against a couple, has he?
Yeah, he's played a little bit against lefties, which is maybe a tick better than we thought. I think they faced 6 lefties already. He started against 4 of them.
Yeah. So Garrett Mitchell's doing pretty good offensively. I think the power will start to start cooking. I mean, if you look at his max EV, 110.6, and the hard hit, 45.5% for Garrett Mitchell, those are trending. Those are decent numbers. So the .065 ISO, I think that's the number that's going to change. I wish he stole more. I wish Joey Ortiz stole more, but those 2 players for me are buy lows. They're pickups, they're buy lows. I think they're 12 team. I think they might even be 10 team relevant, but I understand. In a 10 teamer, you're looking at a lot of players, and maybe Joey Ortiz doesn't rise to that. But there was a Discord conversation about Joey Ortiz, which was that, do we overvalue the fact that he just did a lot of things at above average rate last year? And so I did a query where I just asked, who among qualified hitters last year was slightly better than average at K, BB, max EV, barrel, and speed. And those are things that Joey Ortiz was slightly better than average at. And I'm talking slightly. I did not take anybody that was way better than average at any of those things. I had very sort of tight bands. And what I came up with: Corbin Carroll, Spencer Steer, Wyatt Langford, George Springer, Joey Ortiz, Brian Reynolds, and Josh Naylor. So I'm still in on Joey Ortiz. I wish he'd stolen a base by now, but you can still get to 15, 20 stolen bases with late. Or if it's only 10 for him this year and he's a 260, 15, 10 guy, I think it'll still end up having positive value for your team. And Garrett Mitchell's already stolen a base, and I think the power is going to come.
Yeah, if you watch Garrett Mitchell, his speed is so easy to see. 94th percentile in sprint speed. Not surprised to see that backed up. He's also 96th percentile in bat speed, though. So there is definitely that can do damage power in his bat. I don't know if it's more than like 15 to 20 homers in a typical year, but you'll take that with the speed that he brings. And getting those chances
94th percentile bat speed, you'd expect there to be more than that.
There could be more than that. I think for me, it comes down to the swing and miss. Like there's always that element of swing and miss with Garrett Mitchell that, early on down 25% in the K rate, but it's only 12 games. So yeah, I think he makes a lot of sense. Bryce Terang's got 3 homers. I think I said on this show that I have no expectation of Bryce Terang developing more power. 3 homers in the first 2 weeks. And apparently he's using Ryan Braun's old swingman batting gloves. That's the secret.
Right.
I love the swingman stuff. I've got my swingman sweatshirt that I've been wearing forever. I'll never let that thing go. But I that's it. That's the whole story.
Yeah, we got. Yeah, I think. I think this whole list is good. Because of playing time. Playing time is key, right? So if there's different reasonings, there's different leagues where each of these is more fitting, but I see buys here. I see buys and buy lows, and I see acquirable players. I see guys who are going to be on your waiver wire that you should pick up. I like all of these guys, to different extents. I do wonder what happens to Alan Roden when Dalton Varsho comes back. Like some of these guys are shorter term picks. Like I said about Ben Rice, like I said about Masataka Ishida and Willie Abreu. But Willie Abreu has played so well that actually I think he's just their starter. I don't know that he's acquirable anywhere, but if he is available, even in your 10 team, like I'd pick him up, I think he's a buy high in fantasy because you heard it in Jen McCaffrey's voice when we talked to her on Tuesday. Like when I was like, they could get more by trading Williams. She's like, they're not going to trade Williams.
I think that's something that I find really helpful when we talk to the beat writers is they know how much a player means in the clubhouse and to an organization on a soft skills sort of level. Just they have a better sense of that. We have outside looking in for so many of the clubhouses. I mean, you're in San Francisco. You could get around the Giants a lot. A's, you get up there now still too.
Yeah, but I'm not with. You're
not there all the time,
right? Yeah,
yeah. You're not like camped out with them like every day. So and I feel like that's like an extra level of insight that you can get from a beat writer that you just can't really get anywhere else. So I agree with you. I mean, I think Wilyer Abreu is more important to the Red Sox than many of us thought throughout the winter. We saw him as more of an expendable. They could just move this guy. Like, no, they actually like him. And Yoshida getting traded does seem a lot more likely. But yeah, I would agree with you on this list. And look at our guy, Kyle Manzardo, off to a nice start too, even playing a little bit of first base. And I think with a lot of guys too, it's just like, how are they being used defensively? Jonathan Aranda actually playing more first base than Yandy Diaz. I think that's kind of a good thing in the long run too, just as far as figuring out if he's defensively limited to DH only, or if they actually trust his glove enough to keep him in the field.
Yeah, if one of the two of them gets traded, speaking of trades and long-term situations on depth charts, if one of the two of them gets traded, it's Yandy Diaz because he's owed money.
Right. Yeah, that's
so.
That's
Aranda looks like he's playing his way into being the future Yandy Diaz.
Yeah. So a lot of interesting situations that we're watching. I noticed Christopher Morel, 8 of 12 starts so far. It's going to make my bold prediction of the 30-plus homers. I think I even said 35. It's going to make that hard to pay off if he keeps losing playing time.
It also doesn't make any sense. It's like, he's a righty, so it's not a strict platoon. They're trying to find times to get him in there, but I guess Aranda's a righty too, right? So there might not be enough room on the Rays for two guys who might hit the ball well, but have bricks for hands.
Well, Aranda's a lefty, but they've been playing Morel in left exclusively. That's the thing too. He's not the guy rotating into the DH spot. He's playing left field. So they're trying to see if it works out.
Yeah, I think, but I think what I said still stands to some degree, which is that they're both limited defensively.
Yeah.
And if you have Yandy, Morel, and Aranda on the same team, then there are nights where you're going to pick defense over one of them.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. Curtis Mead not playing as much as we would have hoped coming off the big spring. 4 out of 12 starts so far, both times against lefties, of course. He was out there, but only 2 starts this year against righties.
The first base platoon, I guess, huh?
Yeah, just sort of the extra guy right now. He's made starts at first, second, and third, but just a bench player for the start of the season. So that has been a little bit of a bummer if you're hoping for more. The other guy that kind of fits into this conversation, you mentioned in passing, Colt Keith playing a little more than expected. Spencer Torkelson started all 12 games for the Tigers so far. I know Glaber's been hurt, but we did see a couple of lineups to begin the season with all 3 of those guys in, with Colt Keith playing his new position at first, Glaber at second, and Torque as the DH. I think that's their default approach because they've been using Kerry Carpenter in the outfield a lot. Yeah, only 1 game as a DH so far. So I think they're comfortable moving Carpenter between those outfield corners and just getting their best combination of bats out there, which is a great sign for Torque if he continues to hit.
Yeah, and they don't have such a great outfield that, that there's not a, they also have been hit by injuries in Matt Vierling out there. So you got Riley and Parker Meadows missing. So what happens when Parker Meadows is back and Matt Vierling is back? That's another story for another day. And that's why I say it's a little bit more complicated if you're in keeper leagues and trying to figure this stuff out long term. But for now, that list is full of buys.
And they moved Parker Meadows to the 60-day IL in late March too. So he's still 6+ weeks away at the earliest from getting back into the equation. Torkelson, I mean, look, it's nice to see Torkelson swinging the bat well again. Like I couldn't figure out why it was so bad. I wasn't all in on the bounce back because I thought the playing time was uncertain. We wondered if everyone were healthy, if he was even going to make the roster. He has hit the ground running to start the season. Already popped 3 homers so far in the first 12 games. Looks like one of the best versions of Spencer Torkelson we've seen yet.
Yeah, I should have his contact point change. I'm not surprised he didn't pop on the contact point change thing because his pull rate is through the roof.
That seems like a very good choice for Torkelson given his overall skills.
Yeah, that's right.
Getting to that hard hit rate is 55.2%, even better than what he had in 2023 when he popped 31 homers. So this looks really good for Spencer Torkelson. Got a few mailbag questions I wanted to get into today's show. This one came back from Bring Back Bison 70. What are the expectations for Steinbrenner Field, where the Rays are playing their home games during the summer when the weather gets even hotter and muggier in Florida?
I mean, I think your base expectation should be a hot Yankee Stadium. Just like it is the same size as Yankee Stadium, but it's going to be hotter, and more humid. So I would assume that it's going to be a real hitter's haven. However, there's a really great piece by Michael Rosen on Fangraphs where he points out that this Jonathan Aranda fly ball that he hit, these are all balls with Jonathan Aranda's EV and LA specs. I forget exactly how hard he hit it, but I think I can find that in the piece. But let's see, it's 99 miles per hour with a 37-degree launch angle.
That's pretty good.
There have been 1,173 balls hit with those 2 combinations, and only one of them failed to go 300 feet like Aranda's fly ball did. So you can see how he has it highlighted there. So the wind blows in at night.
Uh-oh.
And it blows out during the day is basically what he was saying. And so you should expect it to shift patterns over the season and stuff. So it's really, you got to read the piece. But he says, if I had to guess, GMS Field will play even more extreme, blowing baseballs every which way around the high Tampa sky. So he says it's going to be like Wrigley, where there's 150 points difference in OPS between strong winds out and strong winds in. And, the time of the year shifts the patterns too. So it's really difficult. If you're a high-level DFS player, you'll just check the winds. You know where to get it. If you're not, it's It's very likely to blow out in the afternoon. So day games are going to be, take the overs and in your pick sixes, take day game hitters in Tampa. It's a mixed bag in the evenings, blowing out 42% of the time and blowing in 23% of the time. And it says by September and potentially in October, the park will start to play much more like a pitcher's park. So this is something that's going to change over time and has real parallels to Sacramento. Because in Sacramento, I was there on opening day, 48 degrees, but the wind was blowing out. And
that was a night game. Was it a night game or a late afternoon game? What time was the local start?
It was a night game. I think it was a 6:40 or something. But it was 48 degrees, so it was cold, but the ball was going out. And then in the next series, the wind wasn't flowing out as much, and it was warmer, and the ball didn't fly out as much. So Sacramento's going to be really hard to figure out. But I will tell you this was all at cold for Sacramento. And at some point, it's going to get hot. So I'm worried that Sacramento is going to be the number one offensive field this year in baseball.
You think in the middle of the summer, at least, it's going to play even more aggressively than Coors?
It's going to be 98 plus at game time in the evening in Sacramento in July and August. So it's just going to be really hot. I think the ball is going to fly. So because you can have hot, and I mean, the wind is the big chaotic factor, and we're starting to know more about that. And we got it a little bit more sussed with that piece for what's happening at the boss, Steinbrenner Field. But Sutter Health, we're gonna have to do analysis like that too, because the wind seems to be of outsized importance, and that's annoying because it's not like when you in your pick six thing. It's not like they have a little flag and, wind out, wind in, Although, Niv, if you're listening.
Oh, come on. Niv's done enough. Look, we don't need to ask for more features. This is fine. We can click open the weather tab. And I know there's some weather stuff on the RotoWire lineups pages. If you're just looking for a one spot to help you with your pick sixes and your daily decisions. Just, okay, wind's blowing out 20 miles an hour. Oh, wind's blowing at 20 miles an hour. Adjust accordingly. But yeah, if you're in a weekly league, even if the seasonal patterns are generally changing, each day is a little different. You just never know.
You're going to think very differently about Pepio. I would just say that, when you're trying to think about them, like our preseason analysis to some point has kind of held, I think, which is there are some pitchers that are just going to be good enough to be good there. It's not necessarily like Colorado where it's changing your pitches as much, as like, it's just going to be, it's more like going to be like a Cincinnati where like, if you're Hunter Green,
yeah, you're probably just going to be fine. Like, yes, it impacts you, but it doesn't take you from usable to unusable.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and that's where, like, if the A's were still in Oakland, like Jeffrey Springs might have been kind of an interesting back of the rotation fantasy option, but there's no chance, especially with the diminished velo, of pulling that off in Sacramento.
I mean, I think Severino's going to play under his stuff plus numbers, which might be inflated by the fact that he's throwing a sweeper, and maybe the model's not catching up to the how the league is catching up to the sweeper. Because he doesn't have good strikeout rates, and I think Severino's going to be very borderline. And my Bideau pick, like I didn't start him at home against San Diego. So I'm kind of using him pretty sparingly, and then the other guys I don't want to start at all.
Well, the tough one about that Bideau choice was that they got more banged up after weekly lineup lock too, right? Merrill went on the IL.
Right, yeah. So, he didn't pitch to the full lineup.
Yeah, that lineup changed pretty quickly in week, and there was no way to react to that in a weekly league. So, what can you do?
But just generally, I think Bideau and Severino are situational, and there's nothing and the other starters I don't really want. Whereas, Spence could be situational. He's probably moving into the rotation now. I don't know if they've announced that, but he took over for Estes, and Estes got sent down. But I think they're all situational there. In Tampa, I still believe in Taj Bradley, Shane Baz, and Ryan Pepio. And I think that they can rise above this. Will they give a few more homers? Like, just look at the last Pepio. He gave up a couple homers that barely made it. One that was like a kind of an oppo, just enough. And yet he got the win. It was like, was it 6 innings, 3 runs, 3 home runs. Like,
yeah,
like
good
it's
enough.
not great, but I think that's positive fantasy value for the week.
Net positive, you get the W on top of the 5Ks over 5 innings. Yeah, that works. But good question. Thanks for sending that in. Bring back Bison 70. Let's get to this one. Nikki wants to know more about Tony Gonsolin. Expectations for Gonsolin. His 2022 was vastly better than 2023. I remember some discussion that he benefited the most from the Dodgers' shifting strategies. Is that why he struggled in 2023 when the shift was banned?
I think so. I mean, he has a really depressed batting average and balls in play for his career. He does not have a great fastball, but he does have a really good splitter. And sometimes guys that just have really good splitters evade the model. And so I would say that I'm interested in Tony Gonsolin. I will pick him up. I think he's a pickup in most leagues. I don't know that I have any caveats for you. I think Tony Gonsolin's going to move into maybe Landon Knack or Justin Robleski's role there and just start pitching. And I think the projections are a little light on him. I think he's going to be more like a 4.10 ERA guy with an 8K9, that sort of deal, and be slightly better than is expected of him.
All right, so you think he's nudging back into that 2022 range? I mean, the K rate fell a lot, the walk rate ticked up. I think the stuff just wasn't as good. Lost a little velo, had a homer problem. Like every underlying metric got worse before he broke down in 2023. So
sometimes people need to be fixed. Like some of that is like they're not healthy when they're pitching.
Yeah,
we have on 2020 he had a 104 stuff plus, and 2021 95. Like I think he can get back to those levels where he's maybe a little bit situational, but the Dodgers are going to give him wins too. So he does a lot of things that can make a 4 ERA palatable. In other words.
Right. And I mean, career 3.19 ERA, 105 whip. He's got some room with those ratios to just regress a little and still be very usable with those high win probabilities that he gets on a start-by-start basis. From a news perspective, it sounds like he's probably 2 rehab starts away from getting activated. So we may get a look at Bobby Miller at least one time next week as the Dodgers try and bridge the gap.
Those weren't good starts for Robleski and Knack, but Knack is better in the model, and I think Knack's going to get another try.
Yeah, that was a rough outing for Knack. 5 earned in just 2 1/3.
I don't have an explanation for it. Sometimes you just have a bad start, but in terms of pitch movements and shapes and stuff, he's always had a good breaking ball, a surprisingly good fastball, and now he's throwing the kick change. So I still like some stuff about Landon Knack. I think I'm going to try and hold him in the places where I got him for a decent price, and maybe even start him because I think he has Miami next.
Thanks a lot for that question, Nikki. Question here from MCon42. What are you seeing so far with Justin Verlander this season?
Yeah, I watched most of that last start. And it's just weird because it is his worst fastball that he's had in his career. And that's relevant because he still pitches very much off his fastball, throws high fastballs and low sliders off of it is the basic plan for Verlander. And I know he's started throwing a sweeper this year. And so I like that he's innovating some. And I've even seen the occasional low fastball, though I can't tell if that was just a miss. But I thought like, oh God, here it goes again, right? In that last start against Cincinnati, because he gave up 4 or 5 runs in the second inning or something. But they left him out there this time. So the first time against Seattle, he got into trouble 2 1/3 inning in, and they just took him out. But this time they left him in, and he, by the end of it, 5 2/3 with 9 strikeouts and 3 walks is not terrible. It's the 5 earned runs that you're kind of you're circling. So this is all to say, long-winded. I actually think he has a little stuff left. I am not out. I am still holding where I have him, and if he drops the waiver wire, I don't know. 12-teamer, what would you do in a 12-teamer with Justin Verlander if he's out there on the waiver wire?
Probably looking at my worst pitcher and seeing if he's still an upgrade over that. I mean, it might be a streaming spot anyway, and I think I would look at Verlander as pretty streamable at home overall.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that he's been in the zone more often and has a lower zone contact rate so far this season. So I think there's some stuff that is
Look at the
trending
swinging
in the right
strike
direction.
rate, 16% swinging strike rate. Like there's something going on here. He's got the strikeout rate up to 25.8%. He hasn't been there since 2022. The velo's up a tick since last year. Like I don't know. I'm generally positive. I know the results have been terrible, but I'm generally positive on Justin Verlander.
Yeah, I think if he struggles for a month or two, then sure, he'll make more tweaks to the arsenal.
But I have no idea what they'll do though in San Francisco. Like, I mean, ghost IL or like, I don't like. You don't. What do you do with Justin Verlander if you decide you don't want him there anymore?
I don't think they're even close to that point yet, though. I think let's see how this goes. Tough matchup this week, I think, against Philly. So maybe you in shadow league sit him just to see how that goes.
Oh yeah. Be more careful.
You may have to. Sure. Yeah, you may have to throw in 15-team league. He may be your last option that gets in, and I think he might actually do better than you expect in that tough spot. That is not an endorsement to use him in shallow leagues. It is don't worry as much as you're worried right now in deeper leagues if you have to throw him out there in that start.
Yeah, in shallow leagues, like I think to answer my own question, is 12-team. He's a streamer.
Let's bring back a prospect of the week. Do you have a prospect that has caught your eye here in the early days of the season?
Well, I'm just interested in Ryan Gusto all of a sudden because he is slated to start Saturday's game against the Angels. And I know that the Angels have been surprisingly good and Houston has been, I don't know, maybe surprisingly mediocre. But I think that the Astros still give him a good chance to win. He's 26 years old, throws 94, has been showing good model numbers, but as a reliever. So we don't know exactly how much these all are going to fall. And none of his secondaries are all that good. So I just think he's an intriguing start. He's somebody that I might pick up ahead of the start and not start him for that start, to try and get some data on what does he look like as a starter when he's trying to leave some stuff in the tank. And how does he get outs? Because he looks surprisingly close to Chad Patrick. Like, you see that?
Not
good fastball. A lot of fastball, sinker, cutter. He does throw the slider and cutter and change more than Patrick, but they're not very good.
They're not very good, but maybe they're just there to keep hitters guessing or to steal the occasional strike. It's a different look, even if you don't do it a lot. So I think I have a little more confidence in Gusto than I do in Patrick. The Arrighetti injury might be more than a couple of weeks too. So this could be a decent look at him. And the good news is if you're in a weekly league, you get to see how it plays in a starting role. It might be a somewhat short start since he's been in the bullpen, but you'll at least get one more prolonged look before committing this weekend. He's definitely interesting. I think there's some organizational trust that we've built up with the Astros over the years too. And he pitched well enough at AAA where it's like, hey, maybe it just works. It's very low to me, I think is the easiest way to describe Ryan Gusto. Definitely a low-to pickup.
Yeah, and I would suggest that not everybody listening knows that over at Fangraphs, Stuff Plus is in the game logs. So you can let him start that game and then look at the game logs and see how much it suffered, because in one inning appearances this year, his Stuff Plus is above 115, like it's 115 or so. In the 3-inning appearance against Minnesota, his Stuff Plus was 99. So, that's a fair big difference. I thought that the overall reliever to starter conversion is sort of 5 to 7 points, but that doesn't mean it's the same for every single person. And for somebody who throws a lot of fastballs, it might be a worse reliever to starter conversion, right? Because you're going to lose velo off the fastballs and you don't have a great secondary that you can just throw a bunch or whatever. So, I'm interested. I'm intrigued. I'll pick him up ahead of it. I don't know that I'm going to start him without more data.
Yeah, I tried to pick him up in an AL-only league that I'm in with our buddy Jeff Good last night and got outbid. So in AL-only leagues, the bid might have to be closer to the $7 to $9 range because $2 wasn't enough in my league. So just a heads up on that front. My prospect of the week selection, thanks to Sam Dykstra. from the MLB Pipeline, MILB.com crew. Alex Clemmie, a lefty at high A right now in the Nationals organization. If that name sounds vaguely familiar, it might be because you remember it from the Lane Thomas trade between the Guardians and Nats last summer. Clemmie's a 19-year-old lefty. He's 6'6", career high 10 Ks Thursday night in 5 innings at high A Wilmington. I did message Keith Law. I said, Keith, did you see that start? He's actually at a different event this week, so he was not at that game. The main concerns with Clemmie, if you look at the stat page for him, of course, the walk rate's been high. The command grades are low from Fangraphs, present 20, future 40. But he's a 6'6" teenage lefty. So, there's room for growth there. But the main concern is a third pitch. And that's what I'm trying to figure out, is if he actually has a changeup or some kind of third pitch that's going to make him more viable as a starter in the long run. Interesting guy, though. I looked at James Anderson's prospect rankings. Oh, they're really high. I mean, they're just absurd. Last year, it was almost 100 total innings, 92 and a third innings last year in A-ball, 16.1% walk rate. But 31.5% K rate, right? I mean, again, you're banking on some long-term development here that it just becomes a passable walk rate over time. He's so young that I think you can take that flyer in really deep keeper and dynasty leagues. Our buddy James Anderson has him, I think, somewhere in like the 250 range on his prospect list. So that's how far off the radar Clemmie is right now. He's ranked on a deep list like that, but he's not somebody that's heavily rostered in keeper and dynasty leagues.
Yeah, I like him, but he strikes me as sort of like a Dominican Summer League, like 19-year-old that has been doing some good stuff, but don't fall in love.
It's a lottery ticket. If you need a lottery ticket on the bottom of your roster, Alex Clemmie, interesting after the career high 10 Ks on Thursday. As far as other waiver wire names go, you mentioned Ryan Gusto. I think he'll be somewhat popular, at least in deeper leagues this weekend, especially if he pitches well against the Angels. We got Shane Smith looking pretty good for the White Sox. Situation there is not great as far as run support and bullpen and wins go, but a guy that actually got away from the Brewers. The White Sox took him in the Rule 5 draft this winter, and I got the sense that Shane Smith was the guy that any team that had that pick would have been interested in just getting a look at him as a starter. But who are you looking at? Easton Lucas is out there in some leagues. He's getting some run right now for the Jays. Like, who else is catching your eye?
I think I like Lucas a little better because he might get you some wins. And, Lucas is pretty close to average, but his fastball and slider, combo is decent, and he seems to have a sense of what he's doing with it. Smith's pitches all like pretty much line up as average in terms of movement, and that means that they're below average. I know that is a weird concept, but you don't want to be average in baseball. You want to be weird. The velo is interesting, but even with the velo, his four-seam fastball, Shane Smith, is 87 stuff plus. So I have some shares of Shane Smith. I am being very careful with them. I would be very careful with him. Lucas, I would be pretty careful with too. So, I'm pulling up the probables grid and looking for Lucas. What does he got? He has Seattle next week. After at Baltimore on Sunday. So I like Lucas for that one. I would play Lucas against Seattle over probably Shane Smith with at Boston. Yeah, no, I don't want that. No, and he's got a double tap. He's got Boston home and then at Boston. I predict his ERA is on the way north.
Yeah, maybe a couple of bumpy starts incoming, given how good that Red Sox lineup is. But I do think this is the time of year when you have a guy like Verlander struggling in the shadow league, and you see someone like Shane Smith popping up with nice ratios. There are people out there that say, I'm going to make a switch. I'm going to go with the younger guy, maybe catch lightning in a bottle. No, don't do that. Be on the Verlander side of something like that if you're considering making a move. Easton Lucas, as you mentioned, I think the matchups for him, not bad. It's got Seattle next week, and then Scherzer could be back the week after. Like it's hard to tell with Scherzer's thumb injury. I mean, the way he talked about it this spring, he was pitching with it, and he's resumed playing catch already, but he still has some lingering tightness due to a cortisone shot. Like that, it's a really bizarre injury just in terms of forecasting when exactly he's going to get back from it. So that's the thing that could abruptly end Easton Lucas's time in the Jays rotation. If Scherzer's thumb feels good, Scherzer's back in, Lucas goes back to the pen or back down to AAA.
In shallower leagues, I think that you just need to make sure Tyler Soderstrom is not on your waiver wire anymore. He is definitely ownable in every single league, I think, at this point, especially with what we're saying about his home park. It might only get better for him. And I want to circle an offensive name for you that might be available in your deeper leagues, Geraldo Perdomo.
Yeah, moving up in the order with the injury to Ketel Marte.
Yeah, the DVR special, and it's lowest swing and strike rate of his career, lowest strikeout rate of his career, and no, he doesn't hit the ball much harder than he ever has, but he does spray the ball around, and by the end of the year, I would say he's probably something like a 275, 10, 15 guy, 10, 20 guy. That's kind of borderline for 15 team leagues, but it's great if you have a need. And, he's definitely one of those guys you pick up while maybe Ketel Marte is hurt for you.
Yeah, there you
go.
And
then we have a call up. Yeah,
Chase Mydroth is up.
Yes, I think he's worth your attention in deeper leagues because I think they're going to find time for him because Miguel Vargas is playing poorly. Lennon Sosa is playing poorly, and I don't think Jacob Amaya is the future. This Jacob Amaya has been released by like 4 different organizations in the last year and a half, so I could see them just sticking Chase Mydroth in at short and saying, "Hey, you get first cracks at it," especially since Colson Montgomery, as much as I think there's still maybe something left, he is still hitting the ball hard. He's not doing anything else well. Don't look at his line.
He just got scratched on Thursday and I haven't seen a reason yet. It's
not good. It's not good for Montgomery right now. So I think they could say, hey, maybe Mydroth is our shortstop of the future. Let's see. So I think he's going to step in there and just play.
I almost wondered if they were going to send Montgomery back down to AA. Like, even though he's played 140 games now at AAA, that would be a pretty odd choice. But
there's something's wrong. 50% strikeout rate. Something's wrong.
yeah. We'll have to figure out what it is. But
what I expect from Mydroth, I would expect. I don't even know if I expect as much power as the projections want to give him. So I'll say something like a 250 average, 5 homers, and 15 to 20 steals. So he's on the level with Perdomo. If I had to choose between them, probably picking Perdomo actually. But in keeper leagues, deeper keeper leagues, Mydroth's getting a shot, I think.
Yeah, I want to see what the hard hit rate looks like against big league pitching. It's nice to see that it was 34% last year, 40% in the handful
better than
games this
Perdomo's. Yeah.
Maybe a little more hard contact there than expected. I think Mydroth does have some sleeper potential. The immediate ads are going to be more in deeper leagues, though, than in shallow ones, even though he could carve out a role very quickly, plays multiple spots defensively. Easy to see top shelf playing time for Chase Mydroth as long as the bat is, in fact, ready. We are going to go on our way out the door. A reminder, you can join our Discord with the link in the show description. Eno has a chat to get to. You can find Eno on Blue Sky, enosaris.bsky.social. You can find me, dvr.bsky.social. Thanks to our producer, Brian Smith, putting this episode together. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Monday.
Thanks for listening.